Created in 2005 and hosted by security industry veterans, Paul's Security Weekly is your source for in-depth coverage of the latest vulnerabilities, exploits, and security research. Our weekly security news discussion dives deep into the security issues we face today and potential solutions in a fun and lively atmosphere. Each week, we bring on guests from the security community to learn about their journey and discuss topics relevant to their work and research. You can also subscribe to our show by visiting securityweekly.com/subscribe or look for Paul's Security Weekly in your favorite podcast catcher. We've recorded a ton of content over the years, so we created Spotify playlists featuring some of our favorite episodes, including interviews with Marcus Random, John McAfee, and Chris Roberts, to name a few. You can find them at securityweekly.com/starter packs.
Good morning, and on behalf of Security Weekly and Paul's Security Weekly in particular, I'm Mandy Logan, here in Las Vegas, joined today by Jason Rolleston, the Vice President and General Manager of VMware Carbon Black. Thank you, Jason, for joining us.
Happy to be here. Thanks for being around too.
Absolutely. And how has it been for your last few days already in Vegas?
Yeah, it's been super exciting. We've been having a lot of fun. Always great to be here and see old friends and meet some new ones, and a lot of time with customers and different things. So we're having a great time.
I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. So here you are really focusing on helping secure cloud native development for security teams facing a lot of transition into far more cloud native applications, and I would like to know your viewpoint on that.
Yeah.
So will you explain some of the benefits that modern cloud native application development like containers and Kubernetes brings?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, the container structure, or Kubernetes infrastructure, like that approach to application development has really taken development by storm. I interact and engage with my development teams all the time, and they're really, really excited about the potential to code faster, to kind of have things be more separable in some sense, which allows you to kind of develop things with less dependencies, less chance of regression, and to stand that stuff up, try it out, run it. It helps you with scale out. There's a lot of ways in which it helps you just go faster, eliminating these big monoliths of code that are difficult and hard to manage, and oftentimes you make changes and you end up breaking things. So the development teams are just over the moon trying to chase this. We have this in our own teams, and we see this in a lot of companies as they go to this and they see this as a way to increase productivity moving forward and get more feature capabilities into the hands of their customers.
That's fantastic. And I know in general it seems that those who really get into, especially things like Kubernetes, the excitement factor once you understand it and are getting into it, it's a joy.
It is. I mean, I think there's always a little bit of skepticism, I think, for me. If you go back to like the .NET framework, and I think engineers are always in love with the next way of doing software development. And so there's a little bit of like, is it really going to be? But look, it's a big deal and it's happening. I think that's the reality for security in some of these cases is we don't drive these trends. These are things that happen in data centers and developers' hands. And this one, I think in particular, has been developer driven. Like developers went out and just did this. Like you can go stand up a Kubernetes cluster on Amazon with a credit card. Like I don't need to get IT to set that up. I don't need approval. You can just start doing it. And so I think you end up with that's just happening. And if you're in security, and look, security experts are experts at what we do, we don't always know what's happening in a data center. We don't always know exactly what's happening in the development side. You can't expect people to be experts in all fields, and so this stuff happens, and it comes in the environment, and it's just kind of dark to you, and that's really scary.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So to recap on that real quick, then what would you say are the top two benefits that come to security teams by virtue of adopting more cloud native applications?
Well, the cloud native side for security, it's I would say the companies get a lot more of the benefit than security. Where security has to come around is figure out how do I respond to this and how do I deal with it, and what are some of the new challenges that are presented to them. And the reality is cloud native applications look a little different. There are ways in which they kind of look like virtualized environments. You have this underlying kind of what you would think in the past a hypervisor layer. Well, that's really now the Kubernetes layer with some level of orchestration that it's doing. And then the containers themselves, you have image repositories right now where code is sitting off in some other place. The containers themselves are ephemeral. They don't last. They're not servers in the traditional sense. And so in some ways you have to think about that differently because you're not as
Absolutely,
worried.
yes.
And so, I mean, I think the thing for security professionals, the reality is, how do you get a view into that? How do I bring capability and tooling into an environment that's very different because it's being kind of thrust on me without ending up with tool sprawl, which we already have. But a lot of that's in order to allow your organization to obtain those benefits, right? Because speed of development, develop features, scalability, like all of that stuff is really important to the business and does a lot for customer success and service and kind of how people perceive your brand. So you want that to happen, but as a security professional, you've got to figure out how to do that in a secure way.
Right. And that, I think, when it comes down to it, that's the number one challenge. Figuring
100%.
out how to do it. That is always the same challenge across any situation in security.
Yeah, 100%.
So what are the most common security threats?
Yeah, this is an interesting one too, and some of it comes from the nature of those differences, right? So in modern applications, there's a lot of use of third-party code. There's a lot of kind of picking data up from other repositories. That creates a big opportunity for malicious actors to insert bad code right into the habit. So it's not even the code you built that's problematic. You've relied on some other piece that's out there. And then it has a vulnerability or it has an issue. So kind of being careful about your repositories, being thoughtful about the overall composition of that software is going to be really critical. I think the nature of containers and that ephemeral nature is very different. You're not as worried about a particular system getting compromised and causing you to reimage it because the thing's up and down so fast. So if it's kind of you're going to recycle it quickly. The threats start looking a bit different. You're worried about them getting to credentials, about getting into be able to create new containers. So you're actually worried much more in some sense about the Kubernetes layer. You're worried about things like crypto mining, people standing up containers and just running crypto code, right? So the threats start to look a bit different. And as I say, you need to pay attention to all those layers. You're not just looking at a running operating system. You're looking at the layer beneath and sometimes the host as well. So the threats look a bit different. There are things that are common, the same stuff you'd expect to see in other places, but there's definitely some unique bits to it.
And speaking on this, especially using the cloud-native applications, what I'm hearing is that we have an increased threat landscape. You have an increased potential and lower visibility.
Yeah. No, for sure. When you go to a structure of containers and kind of microservices, inherently something you ran that was kind of one big machine or something is now being spread out over tons of these little containers. Right. That creates a lot of complexity, right? So you need to have visibility into all those containers, what they're doing, how they're interoperating. How do you even know that a new one has come up that you didn't know about and that it's acting in some anomalous fashion? If you're kind of, again, outside looking in without the right tooling, without the right help, it's a black box. It's just a bunch of things that are happening, and it's going to be really difficult to do much about it.
So that makes me think, does Carbon Black offer anything to help the practitioner not stress about,
Yeah.
oh my goodness, there's so many things out there that I can't see?
100%. So our approach here, Carbon Black has been, I think, a leader in endpoint detection and response from the beginning. We really created the category and have always provided the most visibility into endpoint operations. Is used in incident response. It's now much more prevalent and across the entire space for detection and response of more advanced attacks. And that kind of visibility has been really critical to helping us handle the advanced threats we're facing now. What we're doing is we're bringing that same visibility across into the cloud-native environment. So we're able to look at the host itself where the containers are running. We have now EDR capabilities for Kubernetes, infrastructure layer there. And then we also have EDR kind of monitoring of the containers themselves. And the beauty of this for our customers is that they're already using us to operate their workstations, their endpoints. Right. They have this visibility. Again, I kind of talk, security professionals don't always know or shouldn't be expected to know the latest developments in application software development. But now what we've done is we've provided that visibility and we've brought it into the same place. So alerts show up. The same capabilities they're used to having in an endpoint, a laptop, exist in the container environment. You now see information about the Kubernetes layers. You're seeing data coming back on scans of images and repositories. So it fits very naturally in. There's some new concepts that they have to understand, but the data is all in the same place and presented in the same fashion, so that they don't have to go to some new tool. I mean, I think the default for security, anytime we see something new, is like, great, we need another tool for that. We need a purpose-built tool to just do this, and that's how people end up with 120 or 140 tools, right?
Absolutely.
So
You're bringing together so many people with such ingenuity,
Yeah.
and all of us are like, oh, well, let's fix it.
No,
Let's
and
do
it's-
this.
And it's, look, again, it's innovation, and that's what drives this industry. It's why so many people are here and show up at the shows like RSA, right? So it's an exciting piece of it, but it's a challenge too, because now as somebody who's trying to learn this, I've got to go learn a new tool. I've got to get used to their language. I've got to get used to how the tool looks, feels, and operates. And now I don't really have visibility between them. So if I have something happening in a endpoint that's talking to one of these modern application environments, those are now pictured in two tools. I've got to find some way to join the data, which is costing me a lot of money to send to some data lake somewhere else. So what we think we've really provided for customers is a single place to look at the whole structure of kind of detection response from the endpoint. Early this spring, we launched some network features that give us kind of a great network visibility and some unique insight there across into workloads and into even these modern application environments, all in the same console, right? So it's all in the same place, really easy to use.
So in using Carbon Black, are there any other practices you would recommend for a security team?
Yeah, look, I think securing modern applications is I would say a multi-domain and multifaceted approach, right? So there's a lot of work in here, a lot of things about the software development lifecycle, application security testing, software compositions. There's a lot of work to just make sure the code itself that's coming in is safe, right? There's a separate domain, I think, that's around the infrastructure layer, generally provided by IT in many cases. Are we patching it? Is it secure? Are the images that we use as kind of the base images, are those secure? We have any vulnerabilities in them? How do we know that what the kind of the infrastructure layer we're providing is sufficient? And then there's the operational side. This is, look, once the code comes in, how do I stay on top of it and make sure that it's not being breached and anomalous behavior isn't happening in real time? So all of those kind of have to work together. So the reality of this is you kind of have to operate it and kind of think about them all being part of that big puzzle.
True. Well, so with Carbon Black, is there a particular feature that is your favorite that you would love to see our brilliant audience members, the decision makers, and the security practitioners get an idea about?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we did was cool in the modern app space in particular is, as I said, we're really operating in those environments in three places in kind of runtime. So one is at the base host. So there's essentially a Linux or a Windows system that's running the containers themselves and running the Kubernetes infrastructure. So we're able to watch the environment from that point of view. So we're kind of running in the host and seeing what's happening there, and clearly you need to secure that. But from there, we're able to observe behavior of the different containers and of the clusters, what's being created. And we've built some pretty interesting analytics there to start identifying, do we see behavior that looks really anomalous? Do we see, and that's not behavior necessarily in a container, although it can be, but it's network connectivity outside of it. It's a whole set of new containers that don't look the same way, or maybe you're doing something different or showing up using a lot of compute, right? That kind of technology, I think, is really helpful in helping you look at the things that matter the most, because it is a complex environment. There are a lot of things going on. Many of those things are purposeful. Anytime you're in a development environment, that's true. But it's helping to identify, or at least narrow your scope to say, hey, all this stuff looks okay. This stuff starts to look here. Maybe take the alerts in this space a bit more seriously and dig in a bit further. So we think that's pretty cool and something that's a bit differentiated. But I say the second part to us in some ways is actually very simple. It's that we've brought the same tooling that you're used to.
Exactly.
And we've given you the whole thing.
Right.
And you have one place to look at all of it, and you don't need to be an expert in that space to be able to use the tool to help identify threats and respond and investigate to those threats. I mean, I think that's just so powerful.
Awesome. So then with people already familiar with your endpoint detection side, it's a much easier transition.
100%.
Beautiful. Okay. So VMware Carbon Black, are there any specific threat reports, any information that you have released on the website that you would recommend for the practitioners?
Yeah, I mean, look, we push a lot of stuff out and different investigations our team are doing as we go through. We've had some recent blogs on the cloud native detection response kind of capabilities that have added in. So I think nothing in particular I'd point you at, but pay attention and see what's going on. There's some cool stuff coming out, and the teams will continue to promote kind of what we're seeing and kind of how we think about how we think about security and how we think we slot in, and we're doing some cool stuff.
I'm so glad to hear it, and I definitely recommend. I enjoy the blogs, and I enjoy looking at the threat reports and everything. So, always bring that up.
Great.
Thank you, Jason, for joining us, and for all of our fantastic listeners. To get more information about VMware Carbon Black, please visit securityweekly.com/VMwareBH. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Good morning, and from Las Vegas, I'm Mandy with Security Weekly, joined this morning with Asaf Ashkenazi, the CEO of VeraMatrix. Asaf, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Mandy.
So glad that you were here. And I got to go to your booth yesterday. I got to speak with some of your staff and with you. And I will say I'm very intrigued by what VeraMatrix XTD is doing. So I would like to give you a moment. Can you just summarize anything that you feel you want out there about VeraMatrix quickly?
Yeah, of course. So we are VeraMatrix. We are doing security and anti-piracy for more than 20 years now. So it's been some time. With
Congratulations.
The biggest companies in the world that are using our products. And you know what's nice about it is that usually companies want everybody to know that their products are used. And of course, we are very proud of it. I bet that you probably used our product in the past week without knowing.
That's what I would assume too. I mean, with the application in so many, especially banking, fintech. But go on. What else are you thinking?
But that's the beauty about it, because when we're a business to business company, and we protect the app and the connection to the consumers for the companies, but it sits on the consumer device and on their app, and it can affect the user experience if not being done right. So the fact that you don't know that you are using our products, actually it's good, because it means that indirectly you are protected. The companies that are using our products have the trust in that, and there is no impact on the user experience that users have.
And that's fantastic. To me, it's very exciting to see actual threat detection and things that can go on at the consumer device level, not just an owned and managed endpoint.
Yeah, and exactly. If you look at today, the landscape, there are many companies that cover, if you're an employee and you're connected with your device or with your mobile phone and what's called BYOD. But if you are a company that have millions of users that are using their apps or web browsers and other devices to connect from the consumer side, there is absolutely no visibility and what's going on there.
Absolutely,
and it's very difficult because it's a consumer. You cannot go and I cannot tell you, hey man, just you want to use our banking app, please install this agent that will get access to everything. No, you cannot do that. So it's very difficult to do security in a way that is truly seamless, because it's not like employees that they will tolerate some level of intervention.
No.
Consumers, they don't want to see that.
Absolutely
they don't want
not.
to see it's running slow. You cannot have false positives, you can agree to certain level of false positives.
True, very true. And I would say as a consumer, in general, they just want to be able to trust that, the App Store took care of that. That's already handled. They don't need to worry about there being enhanced threats from their personal device. And they're certainly not thinking that there's threats from their device that can go back to a giant corporation. They're not going to put that together.
Yes, and they don't need to. That's the thing. It needs to be transparent, as I said. But let's take an example of one common attacks that we see a lot. Without naming companies, we see companies coming and say, we put one-time password. This is the text that you get, after you put the password. And they're saying how these accounts were hacked. Even if the password is being stolen, you still need to get this text in order
Right.
to get.
Right.
So one of the attacks that we see is a simple overlay attack, what we call overlay attacks, that attacks the app in the environment, and it steals this text in real time, the password and the text. So now the hackers that are launching this attack through the app, they don't need to go and guess your password. They don't need to go and do very sophisticated thing to get the text message. So they get it immediately, and they go and they hack the account. And then companies are not even aware,
Absolutely.
because there is no any sensors that sits there that reports back to say something like this happened. It's like out of the scope. It's like somewhere else, all these
Right.
apps that are running. But it affects the enterprise, and then they don't know where these attacks are coming.
And there's no way for a consumer to know, because the overlay attack basically, in general, doesn't it populate just a placeholder page where they think they're still signing into their bank or whatever company they think that they're accessing securely. They don't realize they've been hijacked.
No, they don't, until what happens is that they will not see anything with these
Right.
attacks. They will still be connected to the real account, see everything, but they don't know that there is a man in the middle that is getting all the information. Later on, the account is being hijacked and drained, or others, or they leak information depending on the use case that the hackers what they want to trying to achieve. And then they just know that it is an account that was hijacked, but they don't know how did they hijack.
Right.
And sometimes we look at it and we see companies spending millions of dollars in doing the authentication with the one-time password and others, but then the back door is open, and it's
The
so
mobile
easy to
application
do that.
itself is
Yeah.
the issue.
Yeah.
Right. So will you go into that a little bit more about how XTD is able to show and map things that you see, behaviors you see going on among consumer devices at the mobile app level?
So what we do, we our technology, which is called zero code, which means that we
Zero
don't
code,
need to
okay.
put any SDK, and it's very important because it's not invasive also to the development cycle of the app. It's really seamless, integrated
Good.
with the CI/CD. By a push of a button, the protection is being done, and the protection has two layers or two main components. There is the protection of the app itself, where we harden the app. It's very difficult to break it, to
Okay.
hack into it, to do things on the app itself. Even when the app is not connected to the cloud, or the device is not connected to the cloud in the lab, it can protect itself. The second part is through the app, without getting permission or looking at private information of the users. We don't collect any private information. We can watch the environment and know what's going on, and we can monitor each installation of application on each user.
Which is that's almost astronomically interesting when you're thinking about what was going on 10, 15, 20 years ago, to think about having that sort of control. And actually, go ahead with what you were saying. I didn't want to cut you off there.
No. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
But thinking about, no matter how intensely the security operation has handled everything that they can on the server side for security, what a fantastic opportunity for security teams to know that all of those attacks that are bypassing all of the server side security also have a way to be detected and mitigated.
I absolutely, because when, this is another thing that companies put a lot of layers of security protecting their services, the IPA servers. But when you connect it from the app, it has a certificate that says, I'm the app.
It, yes.
I'm the real deal,
Right.
And if this is modified, it's still the real deal. Now, it takes us usually, when we check companies' applications, about like 30 minutes to find out this key
Okay.
that authenticate the app. And then the app goes bypassing all the security because it is trusted. It still need to go some security layers in. It's not that it's like immediately entrance,
Right.
but you already bypass security worth of millions of dollars that being invested.
Right. So they're already at a level that's you don't want a malicious actor at.
And the thing is that you cannot see what's going on there. I'll give you an example of things that we can see. Some abnormal behavior. Normal users do not install on their device hacking tools that are used by hackers to reverse engineer, to modify, to do things like that. Real users do not run farming of a lot of devices.
True.
Right?
True.
So we see sometimes, really not real behavior, like the app is like launching and crashed every 10 seconds and doing like weird things. Normal user does not do that. And when we detect it, we know that this is an attempt to attack the API server, to fuzz it, or it's an attempt to attack the app. And this is the thing that another layer is that we can even mitigate it remotely. And we can shut down the application, not the device, because we are not touching the device of the consumer.
Right.
This is the consumer's device. But
Right.
the application itself that is owned and run by the companies that we are protecting, we can shut it down in there. And some of our ability, because we are working also on anti-piracy, to detect, because in anti-piracy you want to detect the specific
An
users,
individual. Right.
individuals that leaks the content,
Absolutely.
and shut them down in real time, right? Let's say that it's a sporting match or other. When the sporting match is
Right.
over, it's already too late. You want to be able to pinpoint them out of, that's 10 millions of users that are connected, to find out the exact one that is doing the trouble, to make sure that you know that they are making the trouble, that they are the troublemakers,
Right.
and take them down. And this is something that we can do. And this is ability that we also develop because of our anti-piracy solutions.
And it's such, I love that marriage of both of those mindsets with doing the anti-piracy. And now, how exciting on the security team to go, wow, we actually can find basically a needle in the haystack if we're getting down to a consumer device, not just an endpoint that's on our own system in our own network.
Yeah, and that's really, I think, innovative, because I'm not aware of many solutions that can monitor users' application behavior, or the part of that installed on the consumer, but without impacting the consumer, without compromising any private information or any performance. So it's really
Yes.
seamless, and this goes back to where I said, the fact that you don't know that you are protected, because we are protecting the big banks, we are protecting automotive companies
Okay.
that, let's say that you open the car remotely, we are protecting media companies, telecommunication,
Oh,
really across the
fantastic.
board.
So it
And-
works down
and
to
they-
even fobs? I mean, you're saying even with, you're working with automotive companies to even help that?
No, today you know that you can control your car through an app.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
So this app is
Yeah.
protected. You can if it is hacked, you can track the person, because the location of where they are is also available to the app. You can start remotely, stop remotely the car. There are a lot of things that you can do through the apps.
Nice.
Apps are also now controlling medical devices,
True.
right? So you can, through an app, you can connect to an insulin pump or other things that now are being used. So apps are now really used everywhere.
Always. Absolutely.
And apps are so essential for the companies. If you ask yourself, what is the biggest asset a company has? People say the engineers, and it's true, or the people, but the biggest asset is the consumer, right? Is their customers. Their customers is what's bring them the value.
True.
And if you don't protect that, there is a problem, right? Because you're just
Absolutely.
ignoring the most important part of your business.
Absolutely. So in summary, quickly, now let's go from bare bones. Most companies, are they not already securing their apps?
Most companies are not.
Okay.
I think that the biggest problem is that they are not, in the past we saw that they were not aware that there is a need to protect it. We see more and
Fair.
more the awareness, but they are not aware that there are solutions that will not interfere with their business. They're saying,
think
if I
that's a
do it, it
much
will
bigger
interfere
key.
with the business. And this
Yeah.
is the thing. To know, I want them to know that the technology exists. It's working. Companies are using it. We have tens of millions of end devices that we are monitoring.
Mhm.
And it is working. There is a solution.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Asaf, for being here. Thank you for sharing everything. And very quickly, if there's one sentence takeaway that you would like for our very intelligent audience to follow up on, what would that be?
Look at the app don't ignore it.
Okay.
Don't think that just because it is a Google or Apple protecting it, they are protecting the app from the environment, or the environment from the app attacking the environment. But what happens in your app? No, we are in Vegas. So what happens in the app stays in the app.
In the app. And
Right?
it's still an issue for you. You still have
So
issues
they
with
don't
it.
they don't look at if the app is playing by the rules of Apple or Google.
Right.
But with playing in the rule, you can do a lot of damage. So I'm saying, don't think that this is something that is not a problem. Don't ignore the problem. Whether you use our solution or somebody else, the most important thing for me, the message that I want everyone to get, is that you need to look at the app.
Look at the app. Absolutely. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much for hosting me.
Oh, you're very welcome. And for everyone to get a lot more information, please go to securityweekly.com/VeraMatrix BH.